Once upon a time, in a faraway land,
What are fairy stories?
The strange and wondrous place where nothing is as it seems.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest of all?
Fairy is a perilous land.
Before she found herself falling down what seemed to be a very deep
It
well.
is the place you
A
visit
world
in your
of
dreams.
myth and magic.
when the clock began to
The
chime
evening
midnight,
stars sailed down through the
A
sky.
mysterious voice began calling to the sad
She
princess.
pricked her finger with her needle. 3 drops of blood fell on
In
the
a
snow
trance,
white
she
pillow.
followed the haunting
peered
sound
into the
of a
hollow
winding
tree.
stairway to the top of the
You
tower.
can read along with me in your book.
she waved her wand and said the magic words.
Let's begin now.
Well met, witches. We gather today to share a piece of sacred lore, The Queen Bee, by the Brothers Grimm. Once, 2 princes went forth in search of adventure, and after they fell into a wild, decadent way of life, they never returned home again. Their youngest brother, who was called Simpleton, went out to look for them. But when he finally found them, they ridiculed him for thinking that he, so naive as he was, could make his way in the world when they, who were much more clever, had not been able to succeed. After a while, the 3 of them traveled together and came to an anthill. The 2 oldest wanted to smash it and watch the little ants crawl around in fright and carry away their eggs. But Simpleton said, "Leave the little creatures in peace. I won't let you disturb them." So they continued on their way and came to a lake where a great many ducks were swimming. The 2 brothers wanted to catch a few and roast them, but Simpleton said again, "Leave the creatures in peace. I won't let you kill them." Finally, they came to a beehive, and there was so much honey in the hive that it had dripped down the tree trunk. The 2 older brothers wanted to build a fire beneath it and suffocate the bees to get at the honey. However, Simpleton prevented them again and said, "Leave the creatures in peace. I won't let you burn them." Soon, the 3 brothers came to a castle, and they saw nothing but stone horses standing in the stables. Not a living soul could be seen. They went through all the halls until they reached the end, where there was a door with 3 locks hanging. In the middle of the door, there was a peephole through which one could see into a little room, and they saw a little gray man sitting at a table. They called to him once, then twice, but he didn't hear them. Finally, they called a 3rd time, and he got up and came out. However, he didn't say a word. Instead, he just led them to a table richly spread with food, and after they had something to eat and drink, he brought each one to his own bedroom. The next morning, the little gray man went to the oldest brother, beckoned to him, and conducted him to a stone tablet, on which was inscribed 3 tasks that had to be performed if the castle was to be disenchanted. The first task involved gathering 1,000 pearls that were lying in the moss of the forest. They belonged to the king's daughter and had to be picked up from the moss before sundown. If one single pearl were to be missing, the seeker would be turned to stone. The eldest prince went to the moss and searched the entire day. But when that day drew to an end, he had found only 100. Consequently, he was turned into stone. The next day, the second brother undertook the adventure. But he didn't fare much better than the oldest. He found only 200 pearls and was turned into stone. Finally, it was Simpleton's turn to search for the pearls in the moss. However, since it was so difficult to find them and everything went so slowly, he sat down on a stone and began to weep. While he was sitting on the stone and weeping, the king of the ants, whose life he had once saved, came along with 5,000 ants, and it didn't take long before the little creatures had gathered the pearls together and stacked them in a pile. Now the second task involved fetching the key to the bedroom of the king's daughter from the lake. When Simpleton came to the lake, the ducks whose lives he had once saved came swimming towards him, and then dived down to fetch the key from the bottom of the lake. Next came the third task, which was the hardest. The king had 3 daughters who lay asleep, and Simpleton had to pick out the youngest and the loveliest. However, they all looked exactly alike, and the only difference between them was that they each had eaten a different kind of sweet before falling asleep. The oldest had eaten a piece of sugar, the second, a little syrup, the youngest, a spoonful of honey. Just then, the queen bee whom Simpleton had protected from the fire came along and tested the lips of all 3 princesses. At last, she settled on the mouth of the princess who had eaten honey, and thus the prince was able to recognize the right daughter. Now the magic spell was broken, and everyone was set free from the deep sleep. All those who had been turned into stone regained their human form. Simpleton married the youngest and loveliest daughter, and became king after her father's death, while his 2 brothers were married to the other 2 sisters. The end. When we next gather together, we'll discuss this tale and the hero's journey. Until then, contemplate on these stories we have shared. And until we meet again, may your travels in fairy be filled with wonder.